New York City, January 1943. While the world was engulfed in the flames of the Second World War, a different kind of silence reigned on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel. In room 3327, an old man lay in bed. He was thin, almost skeletal. He had no visitors, no family, no wealth. The only sound in the room was the soft cooing of pigeons perched on the windowsill. To the hotel staff, he was just a polite, eccentric guest who had fallen behind on his bills. But to history, he was the man who had harnessed the lightning. Every time you turn on a light, every time you start your car, every time you connect to a wireless network, you are touching the mind of this man. He dreamt of a world connected by invisible energy. He saw the 21st century before the 19th had even finished. His name was Nikola Tesla, and before he became a ghost in a hotel room, he was the titan who invented the future. But why did the man who gave us everything die with nothing? Let's go back to the beginning, to the night the storm gave birth to a legend. Part 1. The Child of Light and Shadow. Every legend has a beginning, but Nikola Tesla's beginning felt like a script written by the universe itself. Imagine a world without a single light bulb, a world where the night was truly black, governed only by the flicker of a candle and the unpredictable whims of nature. It was into this world of shadows, at the stroke of midnight between July 9th and 10th, 1856, that Nikola Tesla arrived. Outside, the sky was in agony. A thunderstorm so violent was raging over the village of Smiljan that the old midwife felt the world was ending. As lightning shook the foundations of the house, she pulled the newborn child close and whispered in terror, "This child will be a child of darkness. The heavens are angry." But Tesla's mother, Juka Mandic, looked at the lightning, not with fear, but with a strange recognition. She replied through the thunder, "No, he will be a child of light." She didn't know it yet, but she wasn't just talking about the storm. She was predicting the future of humanity. While history remembers Nikola's father, Milutin, as a stern priest who wanted his son to follow the church, the true spark of genius came from his mother. Juka could neither read nor write, but she was a self-taught engineer of the household. She invented her own weaving looms and kitchen tools, fixing everything with a brilliant, intuitive mind. Nikola would later say, "My mother was an inventor of the first order. He didn't just inherit her eyes, he inherited her ability to see the invisible." While other children were playing in the dirt, young Nikola was obsessed with the mechanics of nature. He would watch the wind catch a leaf or the way water flowed over a stone, not as a child, but as a student of the universe. But Nikola's mind was different, and frankly, it was terrifying. From a young age, he began to suffer from a condition that would both make him a god and drive him to the brink of insanity. He had hallucinations. Blinding flashes of light would appear before his eyes, followed by vivid 3D images of objects he had only heard mentioned. If someone said the word apple, a hyper-realistic apple would float in the air before him, so solid that he couldn't tell if it was real or a phantom. As he grew, he learned to control this curse. He realized he didn't need a workshop, he didn't need wood, and he didn't need metal. He had a 19th century version of virtual reality inside his skull. He could build a complex machine in his mind, run it for weeks, and check which parts would break. He once said, "It is absolutely immaterial to me whether I run my turbine in my mind or test it in my shop. I even notice if it is out of balance." But even the brightest light has a shadow. Nikola had an older brother, Dane. By all accounts, Dane was the golden child, even more brilliant and gifted than Nikola. The family's hopes were pinned on him. Then, the unthinkable happened. When Nikola was 5, Dane was killed in a riding accident involving the family's magnificent white horse. Nikola stood in the shadows, witnessing the death of his idol. The house in Smiljan fell into a silence that never truly lifted. Nikola grew up in the shadow of a ghost. Every achievement he made was met with the unspoken thought, but Dane would have done it better. This drove Nikola into a feverish, obsessive work ethic. He wasn't just working for himself. He was working to justify his existence to parents who had lost their favorite son. He was a boy trying to outrun a tragedy. One day, young Nikola saw a picture of Niagara Falls in a book. While other kids saw a pretty waterfall, Nikola saw something else. He saw a giant, wasted source of energy. He turned to his uncle and said, "One day I will go to America and put a giant wheel under those falls to catch the power." Imagine the laughter that followed. A boy from a tiny village in the mountains talking about capturing the power of a waterfall thousands of miles away. But Tesla wasn't joking. He was looking at a blueprint that only he could see. As Nikola reached his late teens, a new storm arrived: cholera. In the 1870s, this was a death sentence. For 9 months, Nikola lay in bed, his body wasting away, unable to move. His father, Milutin, sat by his side, praying. Milutin had already decided Nikola's future. He was to be a priest. It was a safe, respectable life. But Nikola hated the idea. He felt his mind was meant for the laboratory, not the pulpit. In a moment of sheer desperation and brilliance, as he felt his life slipping away, Nikola looked at his father and made a gamble. He whispered, "Perhaps I may get well if you will let me study engineering." His father, a man of his word, saw the life leaving his son's eyes. He broke. He shouted, "You shall go to the best technical institution in the world." It was as if the promise itself acted as a medicine. Tesla began to recover almost immediately. He didn't just want to live, he had a permission slip to change the world. Tesla went to the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz with the intensity of a man possessed. He wasn't a student, he was a force of nature. He worked from 3 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. He finished his first year passing 9 exams with the highest possible grades. His professors were terrified. One wrote to his father, "Your son is a star of the first rank, but he will kill himself through overwork." He was obsessed with a new machine, a grammar dynamo that sparked and hissed. His professor said direct current was the only way. Tesla, a mere student, stood up and said, "No, there is a better way, a way without sparks, a way like the rotating planets." The professor laughed at him. The class ridiculed him. But Tesla didn't care. He had already seen the alternating current motor in his mind. He just didn't know how to pull it out into the real world yet. But the pressure was too much. The ghost of his brother, the debt of his father's promise, and the lightning in his brain finally collided. Tesla suffered a total nervous breakdown. He became so sensitive that the ticking of a watch 3 rooms away sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. He was on the verge of death again. And that's when it happened. A walk in a park in Budapest, a sunset, and a stick in the sand. The future of the human race was about to be drawn in the dust. But Europe was too small for a man who wanted to wire the world. To build his dream, he needed to cross the ocean. He needed the man who held the keys to the kingdom of electricity. Thomas Edison. Part 2. The American Dream or Nightmare. In June 1884, a tall, slender man with deep-set, haunting eyes stepped off a ship at the Castle Garden immigrant station in New York. He looked like an aristocrat, but his pockets told a different story. Nikola Tesla had exactly 4 cents to his name. During the long voyage across the Atlantic, he had been robbed. His ticket, his luggage, and most of his money were gone. All he had left was a book of poetry, a few technical articles he'd written, and a crumpled piece of paper that he clutched as if it were the key to the universe. It was a letter of recommendation from his former boss in Europe, Charles Batchelor, addressed to the most powerful man in America, Thomas Alva Edison. The letter contained only one sentence, but it was a lightning bolt. I know two great men. One is you, and the other is this young man. When Tesla walked into Edison's office on South Fifth Avenue, it wasn't just two men meeting. It was two different eras colliding. Thomas Edison was the Wizard of Menlo Park. He was a self-taught, rugged American hero who believed in trial and error. His motto was, "Sweat over science." He had built an empire on direct current, or DC. But DC was limited. It was like a weak stream of water. It couldn't travel more than a mile without losing its strength. To light a city, Edison needed a power plant on every street corner. It was expensive, inefficient, and clunky. Then there was Tesla. Tesla didn't believe in sweat. He believed in perfection. He saw Edison's DC system as a primitive relic. He tried to tell Edison about his vision, alternating current, AC, a system that could travel hundreds of miles, crossing mountains and rivers with ease. Edison didn't want to hear it. He had millions of dollars invested in DC. To him, AC was theoretically interesting, but practically deadly. He looked at this refined European immigrant with his fancy ideas and saw a threat, but he also saw a brilliant mind he could exploit. Edison's DC dynamos were failing. They were breaking down constantly, costing him a fortune. He turned to Tesla and made a legendary offer. "If you can redesign these machines and improve their efficiency," Edison said, "I will give you $50,000. $50,000. In 1885, that was a king's ransom. It was enough for Tesla to build his own laboratory, to realize his dreams, to send money back to his family. For nearly a year, Tesla became a ghost. He worked from 10:30 in the morning until 5 the next morning. Every single day. He didn't eat. He barely slept. He applied his mental workshop to Edison's broken machines, fixing flaws that Edison's entire team of engineers couldn't even see. He succeeded. He redesigned 24 different types of machines. He saved Edison's company from a technical disaster. He had done the impossible. Tesla walked into Edison's office to claim his reward. He was exhausted, his clothes were worn out, but his heart was full of hope. He asked for the $50,000. Edison looked at him, leaned back in his chair, and let out a laugh that would echo through history. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand our American humor." There was no money. There was no $50,000. Edison offered him a $10 a week raise instead. Imagine the silence in that room. Tesla, a man of absolute honor, a man who believed that a word given was a sacred bond, felt the floor drop beneath him. He didn't argue. He didn't scream. He did something much more powerful. He took his hat, he turned around, and he walked out. He quit the most famous company in the world with $0 in his pocket. The winter of 1886 was one of the coldest in New York history, and for Nikola Tesla, it was a living nightmare. The man who could visualize the rotation of the planets was now forced to shovel dirt. Because he had no money and no references, the only job he could find was as a ditch digger. For $2 a day, Nikola Tesla dug the very trenches that would hold Thomas Edison's DC cables. Think about that irony. The man who had the blueprints for the future of humanity in his head was buried waist deep in the mud, digging for his survival. He later wrote that this was the most painful period of his life. He felt that his education, His talents and his visions were a cruel joke played by fate. He was at the absolute bottom. But even in the mud, Tesla was a lightning rod. While digging those ditches, Tesla didn't stop talking. He talked to the other workers, he talked to the foreman, he talked to anyone who would listen about his motor of the future. One of the foremen noticed that this wasn't an ordinary laborer. He introduced Tesla to Alfred S. Brown and Charles Peck, two men who had enough vision to see the genius beneath the mud. They gave him something more valuable than gold, a small laboratory on Liberty Street. It was there, in that tiny room, that Tesla finally pulled the rotating magnetic field out of his mind and into the physical world. He built the first induction motor. No sparks, no friction, just pure, silent, elegant motion. It was the holy grail of electricity. Word of this miracle motor reached a man named George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a billionaire, an inventor, and a titan of industry. But more importantly, he was the only man in America with the courage to fight Edison. Westinghouse walked into Tesla's lab, saw the motor running, and knew instantly this was the end of the DC era. He didn't play games like Edison. He offered Tesla a $1 million deal, $60,000 in cash and stocks, and a royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity sold. Suddenly, the ditch digger was a millionaire. The war was no longer just between two men. It was a war between two empires. On one side, Edison and his billions. On the other, Tesla, Westinghouse, and a dream of an electrified world. The war of the currents had begun, and it was about to get very, very dirty. Edison wouldn't go down without a fight. To protect his fortune, he was willing to do the unthinkable. He was going to turn electricity into a weapon of terror. Part 3. Lighting the World. By the late 1880s, America was a battlefield. This wasn't a war fought with cannons or muskets, but with wires and invisible waves. On one side stood Thomas Edison, backed by the colossal wealth of J.P. Morgan. On the other stood George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla. Edison was terrified. He had invested his entire fortune in direct current, and he watched in horror as Tesla's alternating current began to win. He knew that if he couldn't beat Tesla with science, he would have to beat him with fear. Edison launched what was perhaps the darkest public relations campaign in history. He wanted to convince the public that AC was a killer current. He hired technicians to kidnap stray dogs and cats, publicly electrocuting them using Tesla's system to show how dangerous it was. But he didn't stop there. Edison helped secretively fund the creation of the world's first electric chair, specifically designed to use alternating current. He wanted the word AC to be forever linked with death in the minds of every American. He even tried to coin a new term for being executed, to be Westinghouse D. Tesla's response? He didn't fight with words or mudslinging. He fought with light. In his laboratory, he began to perform what looked like magic. He would stand on a stage, allowing millions of volts of AC to pass through his own body, lighting up glass tubes in his hands until he glowed like a celestial being. He was showing the world that electricity, like fire, was only dangerous if you didn't understand it. The turning point came in 1893. The city of Chicago was hosting the world's Columbian Exposition, the legendary White City. It was meant to be the greatest showcase of human progress. The organizers needed to light the fair. Edison's General Electric bid $1 million. Westinghouse, using Tesla's AC system, bid less than half of that. They won the contract. Edison was so furious that he banned Westinghouse from using his patented light bulbs. It was a move meant to cripple Tesla, But Tesla simply went into his lab and invented a new kind of bulb that didn't need Edison's patents. On the night of May 1st, 1893, President Grover Cleveland pushed a golden button. In a split second, the White City became a sea of brilliant white light. It was the largest display of electricity in history. People wept. They had never seen anything so beautiful. The war of the currents was effectively over. Tesla had won. But the victory at Chicago was just a rehearsal for Tesla's childhood dream. Remember the boy in Smiljan looking at a picture of Niagara Falls? In 1896, the dream became a reality. Tesla and Westinghouse built the first large-scale hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls. It was an engineering feat that people said was impossible. When they flipped the switch, the power of the water was converted into electricity that traveled 26 miles to Buffalo, New York. This changed everything. It proved that AC could power entire cities from hundreds of miles away. Within years, Tesla's system reached New York City, lighting up Broadway and powering the subways. The world was now officially Teslafied. This should have been the moment Nikola Tesla became the richest man on Earth. His contract with Westinghouse gave him $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity sold. With the world switching to AC, Tesla's royalties would have made him the world's first billionaire, with a fortune that would dwarf even Bill Gates or Elon Musk today. But there was a problem. Westinghouse was in trouble. His rivals and bankers, led by J.P. Morgan, were trying to crush him. They told Westinghouse that his company would only survive if he got rid of Tesla's royalty contract. George Westinghouse went to Tesla and explained the situation. He told him that the company that was bringing light to the world was about to collapse under the weight of his royalties. Tesla didn't hesitate. He looked at the man who had believed in him when he was digging ditches. He said, "George, you are my friend. You believed in me when no one else did. You will save your company so you can continue my work. Here is your contract." With a few tears, Tesla ripped up a document worth billions of dollars. He gave up the greatest fortune in history so that the world could have electricity. He chose the future of humanity over his own bank account. For a brief moment in the late 1890s, Tesla was the most famous man in New York. He lived at the Waldorf Astoria. He dined with kings and poets. His best friend was Mark Twain. Twain would spend hours in Tesla's lab, fascinated by the high-frequency experiments that made his hair stand on end. Tesla was a rock star of the Gilded Age. He was tall, elegant, and spoke 8 languages. He was a dandy who wore silk shirts and suede gloves. But while he enjoyed the fame, his mind was already moving past light bulbs. He had noticed something strange in his lab. He was sending signals through the air without wires. He had invented the radio before Marconi. He had seen X-rays before Roentgen. He was even building a remote-controlled boat, the world's first robot. But his biggest vision was yet to come, a vision so big it would either save the world or destroy him. He wanted to give the entire planet free, wireless energy. He was ready for his final, most ambitious project, Wardenclyffe. But the titans of Wall Street were watching. They had tolerated Tesla's genius as long as it made them money. But a man who wanted to give power away for free, that was a man who had to be stopped. Part 4. The Fall of a Titan. By the dawn of the 20th century, Nikola Tesla was a god among men. But Tesla didn't want to be a god of the past. He wanted to be the architect of a future that seemed impossible even to the most brilliant minds of his time. He was tired of wires. He looked at the earth and the atmosphere and saw a giant battery waiting to be tapped. His new dream was called the World Wireless System. He didn't just want to send telegrams without wires. He wanted to transmit unlimited electrical power through the very air we breathe. He wanted a man in London to be able to light a lamp using energy generated in New York for free. To test his theories, Tesla retreated to the high altitudes of Colorado Springs in 1899. There, he built a laboratory that looked like something out of a nightmare. He created a massive magnifying transmitter that produced artificial lightning bolts 135 feet long. The thunder from his lab could be heard 15 miles away. During one experiment, he accidentally burned out the entire power grid of Colorado Springs, plunging the city into darkness. But in that darkness, Tesla saw something. He claimed he had sent a wireless signal that traveled through the Earth and came back. He even claimed to have received rhythmic signals from another planet, Mars. The press began to change their tone. Was Tesla a genius, or was he losing his mind? Tesla returned to New York and approached the most powerful financier in the world, J.P. Morgan. Morgan gave Tesla $150,000, a fortune back then, to build a tower on Long Island called Wardenclyffe. Morgan thought he was investing in a radio tower to compete with Guglielmo Marconi. But Tesla was lying, or rather, he was dreaming bigger than he told his investor. He used the money to start building a giant telecommunications and wireless power hub. Then, in December 1901, disaster struck. Marconi successfully sent a radio signal across the Atlantic. He had done it with a much smaller, cheaper setup, using 17 of Tesla's own patents. When J.P. Morgan saw the news, he went to Tesla. Morgan asked the question that would kill Tesla's dream. If anyone can simply stick an antenna in the ground and draw power for free, where do I put the meter? How do I charge them for the electricity? Tesla's answer was that of a visionary, not a businessman. He talked about the betterment of humanity. Morgan, the man who owned the world, didn't care about humanity. He cared about profit. He pulled the funding. He made sure no other banker would touch Tesla. Wardenclyffe, the tower that was supposed to save the world, became a hollow, wooden skeleton. The collapse of Wardenclyffe broke something inside Nikola Tesla. He suffered a total nervous breakdown, and as his professional life fell apart, his inner world began to take a dark turn. The eccentricities he had managed all his life became full-blown obsessions. He became terrified of germs. He would use 18 napkins to clean his dinner table. He had a pathological fear of pearls. If a woman at dinner wore a pearl necklace, Tesla would have to leave the room. Everything had to be in multiples of 3. He would walk around a building 3 times before entering. He stayed in hotel rooms whose numbers were divisible by 3. The man who had mastered the lightning was now a prisoner of his own brain. As the years passed, the world moved on. Marconi won the Nobel Prize for the radio, using Tesla's ideas. Edison remained a hero. Tesla, meanwhile, was moving from one hotel to another, leaving behind trunks of unpaid bills. He retreated into a strange, lonely world. He spent his days in the parks of New York feeding pigeons. He began to claim that he could communicate with them. He spoke of one particular white pigeon. He said, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." He claimed that one night, the pigeon flew into his room to tell him she was dying. He said a light came from her eyes, a light more powerful than any he had ever created in his lab. When she died, Tesla said, "The light went out of my life." To stay relevant, to keep his hope alive, Tesla began to make crazier and crazier claims to the press. He talked about a teleforce or a death ray that could melt airplane engines from 250 miles away. He talked about photographing thoughts. The scientific community turned its back on him. To the new generation of physicists, Tesla was a relic of the past, a mad scientist living in a hotel room with his birds. He was a man who had seen the future too early, and now he was being punished for it. In 1917, the Wardenclyffe Tower, his greatest dream, was sold for scrap and dynamited. Tesla watched from his hotel window as the skeleton of his future was turned into dust. He was 61 years old, penniless and alone, but the final act of his story was yet to come. Even in his final, lonely years, Tesla was still inventing. And what he left behind in those dusty hotel trunks was so dangerous that the FBI was waiting for the moment his heart stopped beating. Part 5. The Eternal Legacy. On January 7th, 1943, the world was too busy killing itself to notice that its greatest creator had left the stage. Nikola Tesla died as he had lived for the last decade, in total silence. A maid, Alice Monaghan, broke the 2-day seclusion of the room to find the 86-year-old inventor lying still, his face thin but peaceful. He died of coronary thrombosis, alone in a hotel room he couldn't afford. There were no piles of gold under his bed. There were no stock certificates. But there were trunks, dozens of wooden trunks filled with notebooks, blueprints, and journals. And before his body was even cold, the world of shadows came knocking. Even though Tesla had been an American citizen for over 50 years, the government moved in with surprising speed. The Office of Alien Property Custodian seized every single one of Tesla's papers. Why? Because the United States was at war, and rumors of Tesla's death ray, the Teleforce weapon, had reached the highest levels of the Pentagon. They were terrified that the mad scientist had actually succeeded. They feared that in those trunks lay a weapon that could melt an army from across the ocean. To analyze these papers, the government called in a brilliant engineer from MIT. His name was John G. Trump, the uncle of a future American president. After 3 days of intense study, Trump issued his report. He claimed there was nothing in Tesla's papers that could be used as a weapon. He called them speculative and philosophical. But many didn't believe him. To this day, conspiracy theories swirl. Some say the most dangerous inventions were kept by the FBI, hidden away in a secret vault, while the harmless papers were sent back to Tesla's nephew in Yugoslavia. In the decades following his death, Nikola Tesla became a footnote in history. School textbooks credited Thomas Edison with the light bulb and Guglielmo Marconi with the radio. Tesla's name was mentioned only in passing, if at all. The corporate world had won. Edison had a company that still bore his name. Westinghouse had moved on. Tesla had no company, no heirs, and no monument. He was the man who had lit the world, yet he had been cast into the shadows. He became a character in comic books and sci-fi movies, the archetype of the mad scientist who lived in a tower with his lightning. But you cannot kill a dream that is wired into the very fabric of reality. The tides began to turn in the 1960s. Scientists began to realize that every time they looked at a radio wave, an induction motor, or a remote control, they were looking at Tesla. In 1960, the international community officially named the unit of magnetic flux density the Tesla. He was finally in the same league as Newton, Ampere, and Gauss. But the true resurrection happened in the digital age. In a world of Wi-Fi, wireless charging, and global connectivity, Tesla suddenly looked less like a madman and more like a prophet. The internet fell in love with him. He became the patron saint of the outsider, the pure genius who cared about progress more than profit. Today, the most valuable car company in the world bears his name. His face is on the currency of Serbia. Huge statues of him stand at Niagara Falls and in Silicon Valley. We have finally realized that we are living in the world he imagined while digging ditches in 1886. Remember the night in 1856, the lightning, the midwife saying he would be a child of darkness? His mother was right. He was the child of light. But Tesla's light wasn't just the glow of a bulb. It was the light of the mind. He saw a world where energy was free, where information was instant, and where humanity was united by the very air they breathe. He died penniless, yes, but he died with the satisfaction of a man who had seen the future and knew it was good. He once said, "Let the future tell the truth, and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future, for which I really worked, is mine." Nikola Tesla was more than an inventor. He was a visionary who refused to trade his soul for a paycheck. He was a man who saw the music of the universe in a lightning bolt. His life reminds us that being iconic isn't about how much money you have in the bank or how many people know your name while you're alive. It's about the echo you leave behind. And the echo of Nikola Tesla is still vibrating in every wire, every screen, and every spark of our modern world. He gave us the light. The least we can do is remember his name. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the man of light. This was Iconic Figures. If you believe Tesla's story deserves to be told, hit the like button and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe as we continue to unmask the legends who built our world. Tell us in the comments, do you think J.P. Morgan was right to stop Tesla? Or did we lose 100 years of progress because of greed? We'll see you in the next episode.